Hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in, sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness and the highest levels of love light. My intention is to make this video as simplistic and simply stated as possible. Although when you're explaining the quantum field and the messages that are coming through from a multidimensional view and perspective, it's challenging to do that in a very linear and simplistic way. My guides use poems and rhyming a lot to keep it simple, just to feel into the messages that are being delivered. But I'm feeling called to go back within and pull out the chunks of information that I can maybe play with and explain in such a way so we can kind of look at what's happening in our reality and understand it a little bit better. And so bear with me, this is going to be simple as possible, and then it'll also be a little complicated that some of you may understand and some of you may not. I'm learning as I go, and sometimes I don't understand what's being shown to me, but I know it at a deeper level. And that's essentially the biggest message that they're sharing with me right now is grow and know. We are in a momentous time equilibrium transition. So that's a play on words. We're transitioning from one value of time into another value of time. And I'm going to play with all those words later. And essentially, it's causing us to feel as if we're out of equilibrium. And this is causing us to have a different relationship with time. We feel out of balance. And this is a transition that we're going through. They're saying that it has to do with our astrological alignment, the energies that are coming from the planets and the sun, our star, energy that's coming from other parts of the solar system and beyond, energy that is also streaming up from the earth. And we are kind of caught in the middle, so to speak. Yet at the same time, we are also not disconnected from any of that, even though we're each having a different level of understanding and awareness based on our consciousness and what we've chosen to come here and experience. So the guides are basically saying we're in the process of knowing more, but we're also in the process of being in this old version of time. And we're so used to operating from within that old version of time that we second guess ourselves. We question what it is that we know. We question, how do I know this? And we want our old systems to give us proof of what's happening. And I think I said, I can't remember exactly what I said in my previous video, but I'll go back to that and maybe add it in the comments. This is shifting our entire perspective on reality. And when our perspective shifts, our reality shifts, because we are co-creating together how we perceive things. And it's just one person can go through the same experience as someone else. Well, nobody's ever really going through the same experience. Everybody can be at a concert and experience it in a different way because they're seated in a different seat. They're maybe on a different level. They have a different thought about the band. They know more about music. They know less about music. The stadium could remind them of something that the person next to them has never had that reminder of, so on and so forth. This is how it is in all of our daily lives. We're all experiencing life different, no matter how similar it is that it seems we're having an experience. So each of us are our own universes, our own bubbles, right? So we all have this, we're all a bubble. Yet we're all touching and connected, and we're all held within a bubble, within a bubble, within a bubble. So we're having a collective bubble experience. Okay, that's it. I'm done explaining. No, I'm just kidding. So one of the messages, and I won't go back into those other two videos. In fact, I think I'm posting those other two videos after I post this video, so I can kind of explain what I was talking about. And so the simplest variation or version to understand is as our body changes and as we shift the energies within us, we redirect our experiences and the perspective of our experiences shift. And therefore, what we tune into, where we shift our direction and our focus changes. And when we're focusing on something different than we've used to be focusing on, it changes what we create. We want different television shows. We create different political systems. We create different company values, so on and so forth. We create a different experience in our relationships. All of a sudden, what was important to us last year becomes obsolete. It becomes, how many times have we thought we wanted something and then we get it and we're like, I'm not even interested in that anymore. And that could be a job, a hobby, it could be a person, so on and so forth. It could be about going to a particular place. So all of these things are relevant because oftentimes we're shifting so quickly that we're really being called to be as fluid as we can, especially during this time. And I'm just hearing shifting our perspective moment to moment gives us an opportunity to reflect on what we're seeing in a more lucid way, just like being in a lucid dream. If you don't know what a lucid dream is, maybe look into it. But in a lucid dream, you're aware that you're dreaming and you can control the dream to a certain extent or fully. So a lot of us are going, wait a minute, I see that and I'm recognizing that that's a reflection of something I'm choosing right now or something I don't want, and that's becoming lucid. That's us looking at our reality and seeing it staring back at us, and we change our relationship with it in that moment. Because all of a sudden, if we were not aware of that before, we would have just walked right into it. I'm hearing walked right into that closed door thinking it was open because we weren't paying attention. And so even the word paying attention, giving value to something we're focusing on is relevant. So we are giving value to other things because we're focusing on other things. So this old bubble of reality that's over here, we're like over here now, focused on all these other bubbles. And this other bubble is like, wait a minute, come back. I need you to focus on me, otherwise I'm going to disappear. So that in a nutshell is another variation. If all of us stopped, eating a particular food, what do we hear? All of us, there's a name for it, but I can't think of it. Supply and demand, right? So we're demanding that we're being supplied by a different force of energy that's coming from within us. We are the driving force of energy that's coming from within us. And so our demands for what we want to see in our reality are shifting. And while there are some that are only seeing this other bubble, that's what they're focusing on, they're going to continue to create the demand for that bubble to stay intact. Others are not even focused on that at all, or are lucid in their realization. And while that bubble may be part of their awareness, that isn't the only bubble that they're choosing to interact with, if that makes sense. So I'm just kind of utilizing my picture as of these rocks that are magnetic from the crystal shop that I took a picture of as my source to kind of be a foundation to come back to. So, okay. So as this reality structure that we were focusing and putting a lot of attention on, a lot of people are focusing back on it again. And what happens is what the guides have said in my previous recording, some of the words they used were potential energy and distributive properties. And essentially what they've been saying is everything's being redistributed. The energy is being redistributed, which throws off the equilibrium. If we're all focused over here, and now all of a sudden we're focused over here, our equilibrium is going to be off. And a lot of us are between worlds, right? That's maybe another video. We're feeling as if we are out of balance because our center is telling us that this is a distortion. Yet, as my guide said in the video I just did, it's going to throw us into a a sense that reality isn't the way we thought it was, because we're starting to learn truth about things that we thought were true aren't true, and things that we didn't think were true are true. We're starting to have information come out about ancient sites and archaeological discoveries from the past, but we're having those discoveries now, which changes our perspective about the past, which changes our perspective about what we've been taught about the past. And we're shifting so quickly to embrace these things, this new knowingness, that what we did believe in is starting to just dissolve, because many of us are like, all right, let's not dwell there. Clearly, this is not where we're going. So now here we are. What are we going to do with this knowledge? And there's a massive amount of human beings on planet Earth right now that are ready for these bubbles, and they're over the other ones. And what's happening is, as this information comes up, and this information is not only about ancient sites, it's about the human body, it's about our history, it's about our political, it's about everything. So everything all now at once, right? And as this happens, many of us are just absorbing all of this. We're like a sponge. We're absorbing all of this information, integrating it, digesting it at such a fast rate of speed that it can throw off our equilibrium, or it can throw off the equilibrium of the others around us that aren't necessarily there yet. Or maybe they never will be, because that's where they want to create. They want to stay in this network over here. And that's their choice to do that. Excuse me. So this equilibrium it's adjusting itself. We are adjusting, and we are slowly, yet simultaneously quickly, working through a lot of things. And so it's going to throw us off physically, mentally, emotionally sometimes, because we're not used to working in this fluid or lucid way from what my guides are sharing. We're used to operating, as I was sharing with another beautiful soul this morning, we're used to operating in a box, and now the walls of the box have flattened out, and we're stepping out going, what's out here? What's to my left? What's to my right? And we're actually able to see it. In her case, I was encouraging her to step forward. And as she did that, one step at a time, she would see the other options start to present themselves, because that's what I was seeing intuitively, where she's at in her path. And I could talk about our intuition coming online and our paths maybe in a different video, but I just want to kind of give a whole overview. One of the beautiful things about my interactions with this lovely person is it gave me an opportunity to recognize that's what's happening for a lot of people. Because if I work with someone, or if I'm going through something, I'm not the only one going through it. That's why I started these videos in the first place. We can tend to feel alone. We can tend to doubt ourselves. We can tend to feel like the world has lost its mind right now. But ultimately, we're all experiencing something at some level that's a reflection of what's going on within us, but also a reflection of what's going on around us. So I would venture to say that there are a lot of people who are feeling this massive shift. And essentially what I've been shown is this overlay. We're already being encapsulated within this higher dimensional framework. It's already here. It's already been here. Some people are going to take a lot longer to recognize that, or to know it, or to feel it. And they may never know it or feel it, and they'll always stay inside of that other box. And these are the realities. This is what I drew. It looks kind of like a sunflower, but this is the old earth. These are the new energies, and these are the even newer energies. So every time it looks a little different. And what I had been shown is and I'm going to repeat this in a little bit from my other video, I've been shown that this is dissolving and this is being absorbed by this. It doesn't mean that remnants aren't still there, but this is not what we're operating within anymore. And this other dimension or density or frequency is also not what we're operating within anymore. We're in this. But will we expand out to feel that? How quickly will we dissolve? If you want to think of that as leftovers is the word that was coming through. Leftover energy and remnants. And so that is trying to stay intact, right? Boy, I never get this many calls. Only when I'm doing a video. So back to equilibrium. One of the things I really want to remind everybody is as this energy comes in around us, notice this is denser and heavier, but it's still a pretty color. There were still pretty things in 3D. There's still beautiful experiences to be had. It's not all dark and dense. Then this 4D or higher density energy came in, and then this is the 5th dimensional frequency, although that's not exactly what it looks like. I'm just trying to be really simple, clearly based on my artwork about what I'm seeing energetically, because this is what I'm seeing really energetically. And these all have incredible geometries, and they're all us, and they're all worlds around us. And it's so, but this is a variation. And so this energy is pouring around us. It's being enhanced by the astrological alignments, planetary energies. It's all connected. The energy from the sun, the energy from the stars, that are the energy that's from the space dust that's sprinkling in through our magnetic field, the energy from inside the earth. You know, as we have solar activity, it increases earthquakes from what we're being told by science. So as that increases, we are then, certain things are exposed. Elements that were inside of the earth are coming up. And this mixes and changes the chemistry and the elemental combinations are evolving. We find new elements that we didn't discover before. And the other message that came through in relationship to this is it's like, my guides are saying it's like a book. When you turned the page, we read through this book, and all of a sudden we're going backwards in time, because now these new discoveries are being made. They're not new. They're old. They're old discoveries that we're discovering now that are new to us, but they're ancient. But because we're discovering them, we're learning more about what we didn't know before, or we're remembering more that we may have always known, but now it's showing up for us in physical form to give us more knowingness about ourselves, about our history, about the human body, about our elements in chemistry, all of it. And so I could go into that. I won't repeat the 2 videos that I'm going to share, but that's kind of what the guides were sharing in wordplay. So now we're opening this page. I'm going to repeat this though. And if we realize a page was stuck, oh my goodness, we read this whole book, thought we had it all memorized, and there were pages stuck together. So now we're going back and we're reading what we missed the first time around. And that helps us close out these old chapters. So that's a way of describing what's happening in our emotional life and our, relationships. So everything is showing up for us. Now we're seeing it and we're like, wow, how did that happen? So now we start to understand, but the guides are saying you're a different person when you read the book this time around. Now you're reading the book and you're discovering pages that you missed, knowing this about ourselves, knowing this about history, and you're also interpreting the past from a different perspective. So now the book reads differently because we're reading it differently. It's like a second grader reading a book. They might only see certain words, and a high schooler reading a book, and now you're, let's say, retired, and you've got to had all this life experience. So now you read the book that you've been reading since you were a kid, and it's a totally different book. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, what's happening to us. Energetically, as these shifts in the earth occur, it gives us we're morphing into something different. This changes at what I'm being called to go back to distribution. What I kept hearing is we're redistributing the energy. And it's a distribution, I can't remember the word that they used. I'll have to go back but I'll just share that they kind of played with this and described, I was just called to look up at distributive property. So if I use this little map, and so distributive property in mathematics is evaluate what's in the parentheses first, then solve it. So this is old, middle, new, 3D, 4D, 5D, denser, not as dense, lighter, right? So we don't have to say these are dimensions, but let's play with that. This 4D is the parentheses. So this is a subset of this, which is a subset of this. So it's a bubble. There's another bubble out here within a bubble within a bubble. So we're being called to organize within the parentheses, go back into the center, and get our energy lined up, and then solve it. So it's a little bit of and this has to do, by the way, with addition and multiplication. So they were kind of saying, look, we have to add these up, and then we're going to multiply. But you can't do that until everything's put together. And they call it the official order of operations. So even though everything seems chaotic, there is actually an order to which it's operating. And I'm being called to play with this for a minute. Okay, math. I will. I don't know where my screen went, though. I've got to pull that up. Okay, bear with me. My gosh, you guys. So essentially, and by the way, I'm on khanacademy.org. It's, I think, simplified versions. They're written in rainbow, so I kind of thought it'd be, anyways. So, because I was looking at this going, okay, so let me just read through this. We evaluate what's in the parentheses first, then we solve it. This is following the official order of operations rule that we've learned in the past. With the distributive property, we multiply the number first. We distribute it. I said add first. So we're multiplying first before we do the addition. So this has to do with, I'm hearing multiplicity factor, and I'm also hearing time distribution. So this has something to do with time, but we multiply it first before doing the addition. And we got the same answer, 44, with both approaches. You guys, the way that my brain works, 44 is so symbolic. So it's no coincidence that whatever this math was came out to 44, but that's a whole other can of worms. Why did we do it differently when we could have easily worked out what was in the brackets first? This is preparation for when we have variables instead of numbers inside the parentheses. Now, I want to just talk about that. So we're preparing for the variabilities. It's preparatory, what we're going through. This in-between phase is what I'm being shown, because it gives us the ability to operate within multiple dimensions without losing our outline. We have an outline that we can still follow without just all over the place. It's the parentheses that are holding us together right now. Calm before the storm, but the storm won't be so bad because we're learning how to operate within the elements, is what I'm hearing. I'm in flow, in and out of flow with this, you guys. So what they're showing me is this is giving us usable and storable information and energy for coming network distribution. I'll come back and play with this later. Okay, what I'm also being shown is it gives us an advantage for the potential energy to use in the future. So we need to do this in this particular order in order to understand our reality, and it gives us an opportunity to fine tune our definitions, but also to move out of definitions that no longer are practicable, that we no longer wish to practice. It's like, we don't need to practice that anymore. We've graduated. Now we're in this in-between space, giving us more opportunities for growth. So the more we can find this center of compassion and recognition and lucidity, seeing the lucid, being in the lucid dream, without necessarily jumping to a conclusion. We're aware, we're perceiving it. This is during this like portal, we're taking advantage of an alignment system, is what I'm hearing, to get us aligned for the next steps, for the distributing our energies even more potently. And I'm going to get to potency in a minute because that's a big play on words as well. So this way we're not locked into something. It's a practice run, but it isn't a practice run because we're building value, and that's a play on words as well. When we focus something, we're giving it energy, and that gives it value. So this bubble that we're focusing on here, while simultaneously seeing that there's other bubbles over here, it's adding value to this. It isn't necessarily taking away value from that. We're able to see that as that other reality, the lower frequency 3D, our past, as valuable. And we're taking the ingredients that we hold as, I'm hearing a geometric equivalent to a higher domain frequency distribution. We're taking that and we're applying it to our new reality simultaneously at the same time, in the center. Whew. So we're actually learning from this. We're growing from this. At the same time, that overlay is already here. And we're able to simultaneously dissolve the old network, but it's not going to necessarily happen all at once. It's almost like, I don't know how to explain it, but what I'm seeing is we're simultaneously dissolving a piece of this, let's say. So let's say this is now dissolved from the old layer of reality, and it's been absorbed into this and this. So it's not that it doesn't exist anymore. It's changed chemical contrast. It's changed its chemical elemental order of things. So just like when water combines, or when oxygen combines, I'm seeing all these chemical elements and their combinations, and I don't know what they all mean, but let's just say hydrogen and oxygen, for a basic example, combines to create water. And you can actually change the chemical element of water into ice. Once it becomes ice, it changes the composition and the structure, even though it's made up of the same basic model, is what I'm hearing. So we have the same basic model, but now it's just been upgraded. Now, when this disappears, what they're showing me, it gets absorbed into these other coils of energy, and it gets filled up. It feels, when that happens, let's use that as an expression of, like, let's say we go through a breakup and that feels empty. Now this is empty. We feel like something's missing. But we go through a massive understanding of ourselves, and we start to feel into what we want. We start to focus on things that we are recognizing within ourselves, and that gives us value. And that gives us feeling of completeness, and it gives us a sense of a bigger sense of who we are. That gets filled with this. And I didn't even draw this, but the orange, that other energy is absorbing all of this. This is just a very single dimensional drawing. But if you picture this, it fills it up. And so it merges, it combines. The emptiness, there's nothing that's truly empty, right? There's energy everywhere. Even in a vacuum, it's pulling it in, right? There's still stuff being pulled in it. But anyways, so it's absorbing that, and it fills that with something different. And this, I'm going back to the play on words. The elements combine to better support the instability or the lack of equilibrium that's felt when the earth shifts. Or, I mean, there's so many different ways of looking at it. And I know that's a really simplified version of what happens, and that happens over a long period of time. But what my guides are showing me is now, because of our relationship with time, it's not happening. It's not taking as long as it used to. And we may not understand that yet, but towards the end of the book, which we're writing now, we will understand that. And so that's where we're coming into this combination of all of this. I'm hearing decay and composition, right? So things are decaying and we are writing new codes, and it's all happening simultaneously. So that whole, we might feel like we've lost our footing, and temporarily, even if we are now in this energy, we're used to being in this energy, right? So it feels off, even though we've expanded, we've grown, we still feel like something doesn't feel right. Well, because this is what we're used to operating within. And once this is completely absorbed, if it ever is, based on our choices, our choice points, or better spoken, our perception of our reality and our choices, that's when we finally go, I feel different. I feel okay. I feel like I'm able to balance out now. I'm able to step forward. But what my guides are showing me is do step forward. And this leads back to that beautiful conversation I had with another light worker. We all work with light, right? We're all working with energy. But anyways, 1 foot at a time. And it's not necessarily going to feel like we know what we're doing, because we're operating from within a completely different framework. That orange bubbly framework, we're used to operating dark blue and heavy, and it's very rigid and slow moving. And all of a sudden we're like, wee! And we can see another way of looking at that is this is bigger than this. We were only seeing inside of here. Then all of a sudden we saw this and we're like, no. And now that filled it in and we're like, oh, I didn't realize that about myself or about my potential or about this other person. And the box just opened and became a beautiful, differently shaped, energetic geometry configuration that holds our new reality, that gives us new opportunities and gives us an opportunity to exchange chemically, because that's what happens when we release cortisol and we activate our pineal gland and our synapses in our brain fire differently. That's what's happening, as within, so without. Synapses are firing all around us. The mind of source, whatever we want to call it, right? We have our whole system is working in this expansive phase. All right, so this also is affecting our potential energy, and I'm going to go back, and this is what I said in another video. I'm being called not to get off distributive property. Okay, let's see what that's all about. Okay, so I'm just going to keep reading, and I'm asking you to be open-minded about this and just apply it to life. We usually use the distributive property because the two terms inside the parentheses can't be added because they're not like terms. I had done a picture in a previous video where I drew these different timelines, and one was purple and one was orange, and they were like dipping in and out, but they were connecting. And then once they connected, they created a spin to create a new distribution. Oh, this has something else with distribution, so I'll come back to that. Make sure you apply the outside number to all of the terms inside the parentheses and brackets. So as within, so without, right? So everything that's happening around us on a physical level is a reflection of what's happening inside of us. Now, I know some of you, if you're still made it this far, thank you. Some of you might be going, well, I am certainly not trying to, rule the world, or I'm certainly not totally in my ego all the time, or I'm certainly not trying to hurt other human beings. That's not what they're referring to. It's the energy that is behind all of that. It's the energy that's the old energy. Why are those things happening? Well, because at some point we gave our power away. At some point we asked for someone else to come in and save us. At some point we said, here's our money. We're going to give it to you so you can tell me what to do, right? So there's a lot of ways of looking at this. So in essence, it is a reflection of what we have asked for, because we've asked for it from inside of a box. We'll call this a box or a circle that had boundaries that we could not see that this was available to us, or that this was available to us, and this was available to us, or so on and so forth. So from another version of that, we didn't know what we didn't know. We don't know now what we don't know. And yet we know more than we give ourselves credit for. So we are still oftentimes doubting ourselves. And that's a whole other video that I can't wait to do. But I'll say briefly that part of the reason we're doubting ourselves is because we're used to looking at the world from inside of this. Now those layers have peeled back, like the layers on an onion, and we're looking around going, well, where do I go? Am I safe? Can I step forward? What if this and what if that? And I don't understand what I'm seeing. But part of it is because we're seeing something that we didn't see before. So it's changing how we interact with it, with our friends, family, our colleagues, our social and economic world, what we invest in, what we don't invest in, what we choose to drive, what we choose to eat. All of it is a direct reflection of our internal organization, of where we are organizing from. Are we doing it from a place of heartfelt coherence? It's not to say that we weren't in our hearts before. We just were in a different dimensional matrix of time and reality that we've essentially clocked out of. And now we're like, wait, I'm not on the clock. I can do whatever I want. What do I want to do? But I want to operate from my heart. I should want to go crazy and do this and do that, but I don't. I kind of just want to plant a garden. These are all just realizations that we're having. Maybe we don't want to go to the bar anymore and drink and party because we retired. We want to go help people. Wow, that's different for some people, right? Not everyone. So I'm being called this just to kind of end on the variable numbers. By the way, this is 4th grade math. No wonder why I don't remember it. 4th grade was a while ago for me. I don't remember most math, but sorry for those mathematicians out there. But I'm just laughing at all the 4s. 4th grade, 44. There's definitely something to this, because from my perspective, that 4th is being absorbed. And I'm hearing it's something having to do with the 4th. Okay, so I wanted to look up what a variable number is and share that with you guys, because a variable number is a quantity that can change based on a mathematical problem or a symbol that represents an unknown number or value. So A plus B equals C, right? I mean, I think that's kind of where they're going with this. And I'm just trying in my mind to compare that to what the guides are trying to express. It's all mathematical. Everything is a mathematical. So it's a variable that represents an unknown number value. So essentially it goes back to what my guides were saying. We don't know what we don't know. we're still in the process of creating this. So it's going to be much more lucid. It's not like 3D plus 4D equals 5D. Yes, but there's more than that. And there's variables that we aren't able to necessarily understand. And that's essentially what they're saying. This parentheses that we're currently in is giving us an opportunity to grow from that and to deduce, plan words, and deduct, and to create more equations that were not necessarily, we would not have created if this wouldn't be happening the way that it's happening. Because if we were just all la-di-da-di-da living behind our white picket fences and doing the same thing, we wouldn't produce the same alchemical understandings and ahas and moments. It doesn't give that complexity. It's like wine. If you don't age at a certain amount of time, it depends on where the region it's grown in and how long it's grown and whatever they choose to add to it, or the barrels, I could go on and on. That's what creates the complexity of the wine. They're saying that's what's creating the complexity of the divine, of this energetic reality that now we can really enjoy in a different way. So that's a good way of looking at it, I think. Okay, I'll probably have to come back to that because now they're asking me to go back to potential energy, or I'm being called to go back to potential energy. You guys, when I say they're asking me, it's not like I'm hearing somebody, would you please go back to that? I feel called to go there. And I'm like, okay, that's me trying to get me to look at this, or my guides, which apparently I have some math and scientists and my mathematicians and scientists as my guides. I should just try to direct channel them. That would be kind of fun. Oh, I have. Got to go back and re-listen to those. Okay. So the guides were saying this is affecting our potential energy. So our potential and our potency. And I said that in my previous video or my future video. But in this now moment, in physics, potential energy is the energy held by an object because of its position relative to other objects. So these bubbles, for instance, because of where I'm located, my position or location relative to these is going to dictate somewhat my potential. So I'm led to think about we are being invited to surround ourselves with the people that we find joy with, that make us feel good, that we feel good interacting with more regularly than not. And by the way, that doesn't mean we shouldn't volunteer or help someone who's not vibrationally a match or is going through a difficult time. Like, I can't be with you right now because you're going to hold me back from my potential energy. But it is making us aware that it is relative in many cases to where we are. So if this is relevant right now, because what I'm being shown is the brackets and parentheses. So the variables, and I'm going to play with this a little bit. What I'm being shown is we are being called to step outside of that one box of those brackets. Ooh, so that's, I know I can hear somebody going, well, you just said we're to stay in those brackets. Let me clarify. We're not supposed to stay here forever. This is just temporary to get us to the multiplication and addition, right? This is getting us through the multiplication before we get more. It's giving us a template to work within, is what I'm hearing. So we're not always going to be in the same template. The variables are going to change. Therefore, our outcomes are going to change. And our numbers will diversify because of our potential energy. And our potential energy is directly reflected, according to physics, by our position relative to other objects. So let's play with that. By our position in relationship to the sun, by our position in relationship to the planets and the moon, by our relationship and position to our location of where we move in relationship to the ocean, where we are in relationship to north, south, east, or west, right? All of these are going to change the potential energy of, let's say, movement. but also our potential energy. We might feel more energized at the beach than we do in the desert. We might feel like we're not as able, our energy changes when we're in a mountain versus when we're in the city. And I'm applying this to everything, all variables. So who we surround ourselves with, the words that we choose to use, the belief systems that we choose to hold on to, how we choose to interpret those stuck pages of the book I was talking about earlier, that even is affecting our potential energy. So it's also affected by stresses within itself. Stress isn't always a bad thing. Stress means pressure or pulling on something. It's something affecting it, right? So it can sometimes lead us, which is kind of the point of this message. This stress is creating a template and a structure for us to rebound off of. It's giving us an opportunity to really exponentially just move much faster than if we just sat on our couch watching TV and watched cartoons all day long, right? Very different. No stress there. Well, some cartoons are stressful, but you get what I mean. Also, it's affected by electric charge or other factors. And I'm being really called to just dive in and say, our potential energy is affected by our electrical charge. And that is affected by who we surround ourselves with, where we live, what we eat, what we think, how we interact, and so on and so forth. So we're right now utilizing all of this, and that is essentially what my guides had said in the previous video, what's creating our future. So how far do we want to go? By us realizing what we don't want, we are able, right, to then see, oh, maybe this is what I want. That changes our frequency, that changes our vibration, it changes what we think about. Therefore, it opens up to more of what we weren't thinking about before when we were locked into that box. Then we open to another box and another box. Okay. Let's play with this just for a moment. Okay. Whew. So I was called to look at electric potential energy in relationship to what we're discussing. And I'm going to use these. I know these are magnetic, but it's electric potential energy measured in joules, which is also relevant. Results is associated with the configuration, I'm on Wikipedia, of a particular set of point charges within a defined system. Okay. An object may be said to have electric potential energy by virtue of either its own electric charge or its relative position to other electrically charged objects. So here we go. We're in this space where we are being charged through particles, waves, electricity, and things in the quantum field. Everything is connected, but let's just use the sun as an example. So that is enhancing, that is an object that influences our electric potential from my perspective. And that's just, I don't know if people agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. I'm using this as a tool to understand how I see us evolving and shifting. We are each our own bubble. So if this bubble has more electricity, electric potential charge or energy or charge, and it's touching all these other bubbles, right? And it's close to these bubbles, it may not have as big of an impact on that bubble, but it's going to impact all those other bubbles. And what I'm hearing is this distribution factor again. So that determines the distribution of where the energy goes and how much charge it carries with it. So the more of us that are creating this charge, the more we are able to clear the path, if you will, and see through the distortion of the old timelines, of the old chapters, of the old stories that were missing key components that were inevitably going to be discovered when that opened up. And that's, there's more to that though. I'm going to end very soon. So thank you for hanging in there. I could go on for days when I'm in this flow because it's all relevant. But what I'm being shown is time variant, because I was talking about variables in time. Oh boy. Okay, I don't want to go too deep into this. However, my interpretation of this is a system whose output response depends on moment of observation as well as moment of input signal application. In other words, a time delay or time advanced of input not only shifts the output signal in time, but also changes other parameters in behavior. Boom. Okay. So did everybody kind of follow that? This is what I'm seeing is happening with our situation with time from one perspective. So everything is happening faster. We are electrically upcharging. We're influencing our environment. We're influencing each other through the natural distribution of our energy based on our own fluidity and lucidity and awareness. Because when we know, when we have that knowing, it creates a charge. And I'm just saying no, K-N-O-W, N-O-W, time now. There is no time, everything is now. K, potassium. Anyways, I think it's potassium. Not really sure. I'll have to go look that up. But so we increase that charge. It has a ripple effect and a potency. It carries with it a potent impact. It increases the impact zone, and we are able to expand our regions of influence. So we are essentially lighting each other up. Hello, light workers, grid workers. We're lighting up the field as lights within the field. We are the cells within the body, connected to the earth within the body of source, or the aether and fluid that is enveloping all things, if we want to call it that. I know it's not aether, but maybe it is. That energy. So the energy that moves through all things. So a time delay or time advance of input not only shifts the output signal, but changes other parameters and behavior. So because, I could again do a whole video on this, but it has to do with the signal, how we're applying it. It has to do with when we're noticing, and if we're lucid and we're in the dream, we're changing it instantly rather than waking up, thinking about the dream, analyzing it, trying to figure out the dream. Well, I wonder what would have happened. We're lucid. We're in the dream. We're creating the dream. We're interacting with it. And therefore, we change the entire dream. And that's basically a metaphor or a way to look at the energy that's happening and our relationship with time. Because a lot of people are like, time seems crazy right now. It's either going really fast or really slow. I just can't seem to keep myself in this relationship with time anymore. It's because our entire relationship with reality has changed. Okay. Okay. So also I'm hearing reaction time. So I'm being called to say briefly what we're watching going on, because this video isn't just about this esoteric stuff. It's based on, all right, we're seeing all this stuff happen in reality. It's not happening in real time. We're seeing the echo of it. We're seeing these things have already been put in order, and now we're watching it play out in front of us, even though it might be happening in real time. You know, some of the events that happened on television recently, we might have been watching that event and we watched it happen in real time, but it was already planned out through a thought process before we watched it. Therefore, that energy or that potential had already been projected into the field and was played out accordingly. So that's an echo, really. It isn't really present moment from one perspective. Why am I bringing that up? Well, because a lot of the things that we're watching are a result of something from the past. And so it's not having the same effect on us that it might have. Also, what I'm hearing is I'm being called to go back to the time variant systems. I think this has to do with variables. So earlier I was talking about the brackets help us to do with variable numbers. So they're not really set. Now I'm being called to talk about a time variant system. And I know if you're logical and analytical, it's different. But from my perspective, they're trying to build a picture. So they're calling this impulse response. So it's impulse response is the reaction of any dynamic system in response or impulse. Let me, oh my gosh, this just took me into a whole different can of worms. Let me see if I can break this down. No, I can't. This is way beyond. So I'll have to come back to that. I can't right now. But essentially, it sends out a pulse. Okay. And I'm going to just explain it from my perspective. So an event happens, it sends out a pulse, and it's a ripple effect that we all feel. And let's say that pulse is sadness, fear. It's an emotion. It activates us. It changes the chemistry in our body. It changes what we're focusing on. It changes how we're feeling. It changes all of that. Therefore, what we create from that point forward is never going to be the same, because now it's been impacted by a localized event that was sent out a signal. So our response to that, though, that pulse, that impulse, many of us are lucid with that impulse, and we're not just reacting, right? So our reaction time has slowed down. We're not reacting or responding in a much more, I'm hearing docile framework. Not everyone, but we are almost doing this because we're lucid, and it's almost like we are anticipating the ripple. I just went into a completely different flow on that. I have goosebumps. So it's almost like we sensed it before it happened, even though we didn't know what it was. And there's something about that absorbs the shock. And what I'm hearing is it absorbs the shock factor, which brings it back to the mathematics, the multiplication, and the addition. So it's somehow affecting the field in such a way we absorb some of that shock, and it helps us to increase our energy potential rather than giving that potential away to something else that is creating a different part of the fractal. And I'm hearing fractured reality. We begin to create from a different template structure. Wow, I could keep going and going. So I just hope that someone found that helpful. This is how I interpret our reality. There's a lot more. And I have a feeling this is going to continue because my guides are trying to get us to look at or get me specifically to play with language and mix it with everything, because language is mathematics. It is geometry. It is basically they're trying to get me to merge all forms of communication so that I can merge all forms of communication and share it in different interpretations at different times and different frequencies, so that anybody who feels like tuning in at different times might get something different from it. So hope that was helpful and fun for someone tuning in. It's fun for me. So let me end though, add one more thing, back to the balance. So we are essentially creating an equilibrium that wasn't necessarily as accessible before. And we are the bridge, we're carrying the torch, but it's a different way. I'm hearing it's like the long run. It's the long wave. It's not just this, fly by the seat of our pants kind of thing where we feel out of alignment at times, but there's something deeper in us that's helping us to recognize and feel into our potential energy and not get pulled off by our misconceptions of reality, not get pulled off track by our emotions that are coming up, because this brings up a lot of emotions, but it gives us an opportunity to lucidly feel those emotions and run that charge through our system, and then utilize it and shift it into a different dynamic. I'm hearing dynamic opposition, and I'm seeing thermodynamics. So in something in the quantum, it enhances our ability again to hold this space. It enhances our ability to, I just see it as being like a supercomputer, really. So, whew, okay, in love and light. Hang in there, guys. I know this is challenging for a lot of us, and yeah, but we got this. Most of the time we have it. Other times feels a little bit off, but get into the ocean, get into a lake, put your feet in rivers. Water is really important right now. Take that nice cold plunge or hot bath or cool shower. Drink a lot of water. Get grounded. Play with crystals. Pet animals. Do all the things. Smell flowers. Really do whatever you can to interact with Mother Nature, because that's also going to help us, because she's going through all this too. But she's opening up gifts. Here you go. You need this for support. Here you go. Anything you need, she's giving us. And we just have to look for it, feel it, and just connect with it. So, and don't forget to ask our guides and our angels and our higher self. That's always helpful. In love and light, guys. Namaste.